all the shows that I saw, I was able to see the exact same thing. But he does it in a way where, unless you were there the show previous to that one, you wouldn't know that he was doing this again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that, you don't, not every comedian is going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
But the people in the audience that, you have to try and, you want to be, ideally you want to be as accessible as possible, right? Mm-hmm. To create, cast the widest net.
Right.
But, not everybody's going to be like, my ex-wife, for example, does not think that I'm very funny. She just doesn't. And that could be because of personal reasons or whatever. But even when we were together and things were good, she just wasn't like...
You weren't her cup of tea
exactly.
as far as humor goes.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, strange.
You were her cup of tea for something else.
Well, for a little while anyway. But that's besides the point. Anyway, let's get back to...
Yeah, sorry.
I keep veering off topic.
Yeah, so some of the things that I value... family, right?
Yes.
You say being a good father. I'm obviously, well, I'm not a father
that you know of.
I take no care of children.
Right. Although isn't being a bartender technically being a glorified babysitter?
I think so. You're not wrong. On so many different levels too, customers and other employees.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So, family is something that is like a value, value. Like you. I don't know how to say what I'm thinking exactly, but something along the lines of they are a priority.
Yeah,
and their well-being, their safety. If
my feeling is, if the family is worth it, because sometimes there are people who have. They have abusive parents, or they have a brother or sister who are toxic and they don't like to be around them. Right. So I think, value the family that deserves to be valued, and the ones that, the ones that cause you grief or, unnecessary pain. Maybe you don't have to value them as much.
Well, have you ever heard the term love is unconditional?
Yes.
When it comes to family like that, so me and my older brother didn't get along very well for a good many years.
Right.
And he had this weird thing go on where he decided, like, he's super religious, and he tried to tell me, like, okay, I got to preface this with I am not religious.
Right.
I have no attachment to religious belief systems. So at the time, it bothered me more than it does now. But right. My brother told me that God's love is not unconditional.
Right.
And at the time, the relationship that I had with God concepts is much different than what I have now.
Right.
So it bothered me that he said this because of the way that we were brought up, like the religious ideals, God being his love being God's love being unconditional was like totally against everything that our family has tried to instill in us, right?
Well, because if you read the Bible, God's love is absolutely conditional. Like, you have to do everything exactly the way he wants.
Right.
Or like Eve ate an apple and now all of a sudden I have to fucking pay bills. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. So many conditions.
It's ridiculous. It's like that scene in The Devil's Advocate, which I didn't really like as a movie, but I thought Al Pacino as the devil was fantastic, because he does this whole speech where he's talking about God, and he's like, he has all these rules. Look, but don't touch. Touch, but don't taste. Taste, but don't swallow. It's the goof of all time. He's an absentee landlord. Like, that was... I'm obviously not doing it any justice, and I probably didn't get the quote right, but that's a very powerful scene in that movie. And because, according to the stories, like, he flooded an entire city and told one guy about it. It was like, you build this boat by yourself and round up all the animals, and you're going to be safe because you're the only one who's cool. All these other people suck. The stories depict him as a vengeful god.
There's a lot of other stories that that do quite the opposite as well. And I'm not trying to get into the conversation about God by bringing that up.
Sure.
What I'm trying to bring up is that I was talking with my younger brother, and he said, "That's fine. Gary can think what he wants to think, but you need to ask yourself a question." I was like, "What's that?" And he's all like, "Is your love unconditional?"
Right.
And it like kind of set me back a little bit. I was like, I had to think about it. I'm like, well, I guess my love in this particular situation is a little conditional.
Yeah.
Because I was not good with my older brother. There's a long story that I won't share. I won't bore our audience with that story, but it was just super.
If you want to hear the story, please feel free to send us an email at personalgrowthpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And let us know that you're interested in hearing the story, and we'll tell you about it if Dwayne wants to.
I would absolutely.
On another episode.
Yeah, another episode. But anyways, it was just really interesting that my little brother was able to put something into perspective for me. The idea that love can be unconditional, but that does not mean that relationships have to be unconditional.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because you can... Have you ever loved somebody, but you didn't really like them?
Yes.
It's the same thing. You know,
Right.
like I love my family. There are certain members of my family that I'm just not a big fan of. But if I got a call in the middle of the night and they needed help, if I could help, I would.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't, because I love you, because you're my, whoever. But
Familia.
yeah, but I don't necessarily like being around you.
Right. That's funny that you say in the middle of the night.
Well, I mean, because that's generally when emergencies happen. Like, anytime...
I'm just saying,
so
in the
like
middle of the
my
night,
mom-
I'm not answering my phone. If
like,
I'm
my
asleep-
mom generally goes to bed pretty early because she works... Well, not, like, crazy early, but, like, early enough to...
Earlier than you and I.
Yeah. So, whenever... Like, if it's after midnight and my phone rings and it's my mother, I immediately get nervous. I'm immediately like, holy shit, what happened?
Right.
Somebody's in trouble. And then she's like, no, I just couldn't sleep. I'm like, send me a text message then, Ma. Like, don't make me nervous like this.
Yeah. I will never, ever answer my phone in the middle of the night, like, unless I happen to be awake.
Well, sure.
But that's almost, like, in the middle of the night. Middle of the night is designed for sleeping. That's just my opinion. I value sleep.
I ended up having a whole text message conversation with a friend the other night up until like 5:30 in the morning because I just couldn't sleep, and it just happened that they texted me, and I was like, all right, well, I'm awake anyway. I might as well. I can do some talking.
Well, that's fair.
Or typing, technically.
You know what else is another thing that I value?
Silence.
Yeah, well, that too, but no, integrity.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good one.
Like if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it,
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I, as a person of integrity, you will as well.
Yeah.
Like,
I try.
I mean, I feel that you are a person of integrity for as much as I know you.
Well, thanks.
We've expressed several times about how we didn't want to show up for this.
Yeah.
Even calling it in, doing phone recordings.
Yeah.
But we made a commitment to ourselves and to each other that we would do this.
Yeah.
And so for that particular instance, I think that's something that we're committed to, and it's something that we value.
Sure. I do it for the listeners, baby. I do it for them.
I do it
the
for
fans.
I do it for the fans, too.
I do it for the fans. This is for you guys out there in podcast land. Send us emails and tell us how great we are. personalgrowthpod@gmail.com.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Next characteristic that they talk about in that article is people being invested in personal development.
Yes.
Obviously, that's something that I will swear by.
Yeah.
I've been doing some type of personal development material every single day for the better part of the last 5 years.
Right.
Like, I'm sure that there are some, like, a few days here and there that I have missed over the last couple of years.
Well, sure, you're human.
Yeah, and on those days, I feel the difference, And I was listening to Impact Theory today with Tom Bilyeu, and he was talking with Mel Robbins, and she has this spiel about the 5-second rule, where you like count backwards from 5 down to 0, and like pretend like there's a rocket ship launching, and it like gets in the middle of you and your prefrontal cortex, and like it helps you to curb anxiety, to make decisions quicker. There's a whole she wrote a book about this thing, and she goes into some brain science stuff that just kind of blows my mind, and I'm not super familiar with brain science, but I'm getting more and more intrigued by it, and I've been listening to more material about the brain and understanding the chemical reactions that are going on. And it's funny, the first thing that she says whenever she gets on the podcast is that motivation is bullshit.
Sure.
Because it doesn't last, and it's kind of like fluff and blah 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 blah.
Speaking of the brain and how the brain works, I saw a thing. It was like shower thoughts. Like really profound things that people think when they're in the.
Oh yeah.
And one of them was, the brain named itself.
Dude.
You know what I mean? Like it's so intricate and complex that we have this thing just powering us. Like the only reason I know anything and can do and move my hands and fucking whatever is because of my brain. And
right.
It's weird how like some people's brains don't work like other people's brains, and some people don't have money brains, but there's a brain in there, but they're just not using their brain. Like it's the fucking empowers the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that like we're trying to understand the thing that, I don't know, I feel like people probably try to understand the brain to get a better handle on
themselves,
why people act the way they do, because really, it's just firing fucking syntaxes or whatever the hell. I don't know the correct,
firing
terms. Neurons, protons, electrons, whatever the fuck it is.
Syntax is probably a thing. I'm not.
I think it sounds
with that
right. It sounds smart, so we'll see. Synapses? Synopsis? No, the synopsis is like, this is what this TV show is about. Here's a synopsis of this episode. Like, Sam is drinking again. Is the cheers. Anyway, the brain is weird, man. Like, that's why there are entire professions in place to like talk to people because of how their brains are working, or when they're not. You feel like there's something wrong, so you go see a professional a brain doctor.
Yeah, we've kind of talked a little bit about how there's no shame in recognizing the need for a therapist or an unbiased, unjudgmental observer of verbal vomit.
Yeah, because you can talk to your friends about your problems, and even if they say they're going to be, even if they say they're going to be impartial, they're always talking from a place of, they know you personally, so they have a different idea of maybe what it is you want to hear, or they talk to you a certain way.
Synaptic wiring?
Synaptic? Maybe.
I'm sorry, I totally cut you off.
No, it's fine. Like I can have conversations with my friends, but these are people who know me.
Yeah.
And so like
they pre-invested in the outcome.
You would imagine that they have my best interests in mind. So maybe they won't be as honest with me as they should be, or maybe they'll be too honest and they think they'll hurt my feelings. Whereas, you sit down with a stranger, they don't know you from anybody, so like they don't have to, be nice or, placate your fucking sensitivities.
True. Yeah. I know that I've spent many of hours with a therapist, and I still see my therapist on occasion, not nearly as much as I used to whenever I first started seeing him, and it's interesting how like some of the most profound shit can be said by a therapist that has a crazy impact on the direction your life can take.
Yeah,
like the most life-changing thing that my counselor, therapist dude ever said to me was, Dawayne, there seems to be an incongruency with what you're saying versus what you do. and I legit was like, what does incongruent